Hello, you are listening to Radio Mereb on 105.8 megahertz from Oslo, Norway. News and commentaries in our English program. Your host is Gurmai Berhe. The BBC today publicly denounced an attempt by the Ethiopian government to propose an interview with fake child soldiers from Tigray. According to the famous British TV radio, the Ethiopian government a few weeks ago offered its envoy to Ethiopia an interview with Tigrayan teenagers saved by the federal army while they were forced to fight for the regular Tigrayan army, TDF, the Tigrayan Defense Forces. The forced conscription of child soldiers to the TDF has been a workhorse of the Prosperity Party and Amharan elites' war propaganda for the past 3 weeks, with a myriad of posters and photos posted on social media. The BBC reporter accepted the interview proposal to verify these reports, which, if confirmed, represented a serious crime. All the teenagers interviewed told 1,000 crimes committed by the TDF and thanked, of course, Papa Abiy Ahmed for saving them. The first doubt that arose from the BBC reporter came when the Afar military and civilian authorities insisted on conducting the interviews not in the language of the children, which is Tigrinya, but in Amharic, which is considered as the Ethiopian national language. The BBC reporter received confirmation of the scam when he listened to the recordings, where the voices of the authorities of the Prosperity Party of Afar, which are of course elements handpicked by Abiy Ahmed himself, were audible, suggesting in Amharic what to say to the teenagers. The BBC, when it learned of the facts, decided not to publish the interviews at all. The journalistic scam attempt was publicly denounced by the BBC, with wide visibility on its news, radio, news, and website. The BBC took this decision to denounce the use of fake news that the Nobel Peace Prize winner, Abiy Ahmed, makes extensive use with the aim of blaming his political opponents for the crimes he committed in Tigray and Oromia. The envoy to Ethiopia, the BBC envoy to Ethiopia later discovered that the 50 teenagers were allegedly taken prisoners by the federal soldiers in Addis Ababa and other places and taken to Afar to parade in front of state TV cameras, passing them off as child soldiers of the TDF. In the weeks leading up to the attempt to feed fake news to the BBC, similar interviews were broadcasted also in Amharic on state TV and private TVs close to the expansionist Amhara regime of the Prosperity Party. Some of the teenagers interviewed looked like real actors, talking about the terrible violence they suffered with a very, very bored expression. Others answered the questions of the obviously terrified regime journalists. Afar human rights activists denounced federal soldiers inflicting wounds on Tigrayan teenagers captured, of course, in their homes and not in fighting, to make it more credible to pass them off as child soldiers. They tortured them. The Abiy government in recent weeks had harshly criticized the United Nations and in particular the UNICEF, which had taken a cautious and skeptical stance on this. Abiy personally accused the United Nations of bias. The so-called humanitarian agencies of the United Nations are clearly aligned in favor of the terrorist TPLF. They uncritically spread all the false accusations of crimes against the government, but when irrefutable evidence of the crimes committed by Tagaru terrorists, not at least the widespread use of child soldiers forced to fight, they refuse to take them into consideration, he said. Of course, another senior member of the Prosperity Party, in an interview with Fana TV, a pro-governmental television broadcaster, famous for spreading messages of ethnic hatred and inciting genocide against Tigrayans. The attempt to propose the false news is a further proof of the war propaganda that Mereb regime has been spreading since the beginning of the civil war. Mereb is a nickname commonly used in Ethiopia for Abiy. The Mereb is a very inexpensive artisan fan that is used to feed the embers on the fire. The term is applied to the premier to emphasize his attitude of saying, denying, and contradicting statements made by himself previously. The bogus interview renders the central government and the Amhara expansionists' accusations against the TPLF of committing atrocities on civilians in Afar and Amhara not credible, prompting, of course, British MP Lord David Alton, a well-known human rights defender, to ask for a caution in the House of Lords. On the front, well, what's happening on the front? The TDF and the Oromo Liberation Army armored movement continue to advance on their respective fronts in Amhara and Oromia. The TDF has taken control of the locality of Kemerdengai, Amhara, and is now fighting for control of the locality of Gasai, very few kilometers from Debre Tabor. And in fact, there are also news that Debre Tabor is totally under control. The city Debre Tabor, which was a capital of two Amhara kings, and of course one Tigrayan king, Johannes IV, between 1855 and 1871, the city, nowadays, it has a very vital strategic importance. The conquest will open the way for the conquest of the capital of the Amhara regime, Bahardar, and of course Gondar, which is the ancient capital of the city and a symbol of the Amhara ethnic group. A defeat by the federal army in Amhara could end the civil war and force Abiy and the expansionist Amhara leaders to capitulate and flee. The Oromo Liberation Army, recently allied with the TPLF and with the TDF, they are also advancing in their regime, focusing on the only corridor left open in the country so as not to be isolated from the rest of the regime. The Moyale Highway, with the aim of closing it to suffocate the capital city Addis Ababa, which is Finfinne in Oromia. The highway, 500 kilometers long, connects Ethiopia to Kenya. It was inaugurated on December 9, 2020 by Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta and Abiy Ahmed. It is part of the Trans-African Highway Project. The highway allowed landlocked Ethiopia further access to ports. In the case that of Lamu, Ethiopia has for decades been dependent on neighboring Djibouti for its import-export trade. For the second time, Abiy Ahmed refused to meet with American envoys on a mission to discuss a political solution to the ongoing civilian wars, as it was for the director of the USAID, as remember Samantha Power. Also, the special envoy for the Horn of Africa, Jeffrey Feltman, was snubbed by Abiy Ahmed, who gave the task of meeting him to the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Demeke Mekonnen. During the meeting, Mekonnen totally refused to talk seriously about peace. He was asking, in fact, the United States to condemn the TPLF for creating the civil war and to recognize it as a terrorist organization. Abiy Ahmed, instead of meeting Feltman, he preferred to go urgently to Asmara, Eritrea, to talk about the developments of the war with his ally, the dictator Isaias Afwerki. Soon after, he went to Istanbul to meet the President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, and in a press release, the Turkish president called for a peaceful solution to the war in Tigray and proposed himself as mediator in the dispute over the border territories between Sudan and Ethiopia. According to the well-known researcher and expert of the Horn of Africa, Rashid Abdi, the premier has asked Erdogan for a supply of Cargo 2 war drones. These Cargo 2 war drones have recently been used in Libya with deadly effects on the infantry of the forces led by General Haftar, preventing him from conquering Tripoli. The cargo too is also ideal for mountainous terrain, such as in Tigray. At the moment, it's not known whether the Turkish president accepted the Ethiopian request or not. Meanwhile, secret police chief and extremist leader Amhara, Temesgen Turune, known as the executioner of Tigray, he traveled to Frankfurt with billionaire entrepreneur Amharan, again another Amharan, Worko Aytaneu. A well-known, Worko Aytaneu is a well-known financier of the Amhara militias who committed horrific and documented crimes in Tigray and elsewhere in Ethiopia. Worko is also a very firm supporter of the need for a genocide against Tigray to solve the TPLF problem once and for all. At the moment, there are not known reasons and details for this visit to Germany. Yesterday, August 18, the American Association in Defense of Human Rights, Human Rights Watch, published a report accusing the Ethiopian authorities of carrying out arbitrary mass detentions against ethnic Tigrayans and subjecting them to serious abuses in the capital city, Addis Ababa, demanding an end of these ethnic persecutions and the immediate release of those arrested. Human Rights Watch warns also that among the arrested Tegaru, there are many teenagers and even children between 6 and 10 years of age. This was our program of news and commentary in our English program of Radio Mereb on FM 105.8 megahertz in Oslo and surroundings. Thank you for listening.